This is a good one that comes up a lot though with regards to opinion, to change subjects, and maybe this is kind of related,
Yeah.
is when people talk about high intensity training, it's funny because you'll hear people say it's the optimal way to build muscle. Yeah, on the other end of the spectrum, you will see people saying like, these guys that do hit, they certainly don't look like they do hit. Or you'll see two different advocates, and maybe you're going this way where you see some advocates of high intensity training, kind of look the part. And I think Jay Vincent's good about this on his channel. Talks a lot about. I've seen some of the videos like genetics. Genetics are obviously a
Right.
factor. And I think he
Right.
says many times about you're not going to look like me just if you just start training this way. There's genetics is obviously a role, but then you have some people, and this might go back to genetics inherently, is that some people do hit and they just look like they haven't picked up a dumbbell in their life. And I'm of the camp like, yes, genetics is a role, but if you're training hard consistently, your body will we should be able to see some visible muscle at some point. And you can tell when someone's got genetics and doesn't have genetics, and stuff like that. But so that approach, how do you explain that some people look big versus small doing hit? The other end of that too would be the idea of enhanced versus non-enhanced hit, because that's the other argument people will say as well. The people that actually look good in a hit, this is my words, this is what I'm consolidating a bunch of comments. People that look good in hit are only doing so because they're on TRT or they are enhanced. And you can't get big unless you are on TRT or enhanced, something like that. And you're an open advocate. Why I love you too. I mean, also not because I'm more higher ground, but I think just being natural, I just like that myself. I don't want to have to be relying or take a drug, so that's not something I strive to do. So I think you're a big pusher of like advocate of natural training. Not that it's a moral high ground again, but just something I kind of speak on. So I threw a lot of stuff out there.
Okay. Let's start with that last part right there because that's fresh in my mind. No, it's not a moral high ground at all for me. And I think the part that most people appreciate, even yourself, that maybe they don't verbalize is you get to see the reality. You see, it's more of an honest. Let me take the morality part out. It's just more of a factual reality. Okay. If I say I'm natural, and most people trust me on that, I am. Okay. I don't, mess around with any drugs. I've been a natural pro bodybuilder, uh, for 20 years, competitive. I'm talking about like I was given a pro card, and I also won the Natural Miss Universe in 2001. Uh, I competed as a natural pro winning the Mr. America when it was drug tested 2011, 12, and 13. I won my class in 2012, but won the class and overall in 2013. So having done those things and even going now, if I'm telling you, and y'all be able to tell no matter what as the years go on by, uh, if I'm telling you that this last year I experimented with doing all body training, it hasn't even been a year, 6 months training all body training because my brother Ian Duckett laid it on me and explained to me, and he got to me with it. I couldn't argue it. I had to do it. I had to know. And if I tell you that, look, man, this stuff, this works, and I feel it, I look better. I know I do. And I have people on my commenting, people on my channel commenting that, yeah, what's going on there, John? Looking a little thick like that, meaning the muscle, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That if I'm telling you, I just gave myself a new and different training stimulus that I have not had ever. I've tried it before, but never stuck with it like I did this year, the last 6 months. Then I'm giving you an answer. But when you have somebody who's been training and they're pretty open about it, they've been training for 20, 30, 40 years, and suddenly they get in their 50s and, suddenly they're looking thicker and more muscular and bigger. And there is no answer that they're offering other than they've been training the way they've always been training. Okay. Not so much. Okay. And again, no morality, no judgment on this. I think even one of the guys you mentioned, he's so open about it. Drew Bay looked nothing like he did going into his 50s until now. I think he's like 61 or 62 now, and he competed in some Masters men's physique show. But he's open about using what they call HRT, which in my opinion is not just simply replacing your normal natural hormone levels, but he called it HRT somewhere along the way, and somebody had shared with me, he's public about it. So I'm not spreading gossip here, okay? But
Yeah, I think even
physically,
Jay Vincent said that too. I mean, he's was
Oh,
advocating TRT too. I mean, not that again, not throwing shade at him anyway, that was his own thing, but I
right.
think that's something too that if someone's looking at HIT, then they even if you want to jump onto that subscription, you're thinking, well, I kind of need this as well, or it's just those
Right.
two kind of go together as like the perfect storm. Which I'm sure they obviously, if you throw drugs or anything, that's going to be nice. It's going to help things, but
Sure.
so but that sometimes justifies that in people's head. And then if someone's critical, they look at that and be like, well, so and so only got like that. It only works because of the drugs, and they can train less. So that's why I feel like you kind of have to throw that out there in their defense because
Yeah.
I've heard that people said about those individuals. So
Yeah. I'll be clear to all of y'all. Yeah. Look, I'll be at the Mr. America this year in October. It's in Atlantic City. They invited me to come as a guest, so I'm gonna have my own booth there and everything. Okay, so any of y'all want to come on out and visit, come see me in Atlantic City, October 11th, 12th, 13th, something like that. And I'm out there in the public too. So, like yourself, no judgment. I just stated a fact that these guys have already said online. I'm not doing it to disparage them, but rather say we can observe. Okay, it's observable that if somebody, like I just said, Drew goes 40 years training, 50 years training, and doesn't look like a competitive bodybuilder and doesn't look like he can step on stage. And then suddenly within a year or two, he does in his 60s. And he's going on stage in the men's physique contest in the NPC, mind you. Then obviously something changed. And here he is, here they are, acknowledging him. And like you just said, Jay, acknowledging that HRT or TRT, however way they say it these days, has something to do with, they mention it as part of their personal program, but I don't know if they sell it that way as part of training their way. But yeah, there's a measurable, physical, observable difference. Now, does that negate the principles? I don't think so, because even Drew looked pretty good,
yeah, for sure.
prior, yeah,
For
prior
sure. I
to
mean,
his.
I mean, again, obviously, I know their own bodies. Obviously, I'm the top somebody someone to do. I think he
Yeah,
actually looked awesome before that, doing anything, and I think it helps the cause more to go the natural card to sell hit than when you start, throwing drugs in the mix with honestly with anything. And that was gonna be my pushback. This can be the same topic here is when
yeah,
you put up Mike Menser, Dorian Yates. I think the pushback in the general public is okay. Well, those are pro bodybuilders using drugs. The reality is us, normal people don't have those genetics. On top of that, that's just hit's not going to work for us. And I think I even hear, I think it's kind of the subtle pushback from them, those channels, like even Dr. Mike Israetel and a lot of other channels that use the science-based approach. They'll say kind of in some ways the same vein that like if you are natural, it's not going to work.
yeah. I
Or doesn't
well,
work
of
as well
course.
as high volume, I should say. Higher volume.
Well, uh, I can sit here all day long and saying, well, when I was in the Mr. America, I the top five guys past me that I beat all trained, you know, 4 or 5 times as much as I did and did not train high intensity training. Competing as a natural pro, I beat many guys who worked out and trained, with higher volume and were genetically gifted. Okay. I placed high in the contest that I did. I never won a pro show. I took as high as second place in the WNBF in pro shows. And, I was always in the money. I was always placing and beat, other men that we're talking about like the cream of the crop as far as natural bodybuilding goes. So if you're a natural pro bodybuilder and you're competing, I see that as the real litmus test right there. If you want to find out where can you find a group that you can take a look at, we'll take a look at an actual drug tested organization like the WNBF, World Natural Bodybuilding Federation, and who does both in season and off season testing. And that's how they treated us. And so now you're talking about a bunch of athletes that are the genetically elite in our world, natural, okay, but they're genetically elite. And were there differences in how we trained? Yeah. And even if you say, well, I wasn't the smallest bodybuilder, that's for sure. I was not. It's a couple shows, guys are like, how'd you get so much muscle on your body? And then I also wasn't the biggest either. So somewhere in between, I was in natural pro bodybuilding. My physique was, let's say, mid-range mass-wise. Okay, in shape. I'm talking about in shape on stage. So I would be. I'm being. I think. You know. I think I'm stating a fact. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be arrogant. I was mid-range, and with a nice shape to the body, then you do well. So whether it's Dr. Mike or any of those guys, the scientists these days, Dr. Mike Israetel, I subscribe to his channel. I learn a lot, from these guys and how they break down studies. And Martin Ruffalo, Dr. Martin, he's out of Australia right now. He did some recent studies on high intensity training versus higher volume training. And he's on, by the way, he's going to be a guest on my channel. I'm setting that up right now. We're already set. It's coming up soon.
Nice.
And yeah, it's going to be interesting. But these guys all are giving you their observations, okay? And they're also combining it with some of their experience talking. And so, would it work for a natural versus a enhanced athlete? They have different things that they have to deal with. First of all, there's a scientist part of Dr. Mike, as well as all the other ones that we just mentioned. Then there's also an athlete part of them. They work out themselves, maybe not compete in bodybuilding, but they work out themselves. And then part 3 to that is they're a YouTuber. And so, they need to create some content.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
of course, they're going to give their opinion on it. And some of it might be a reach. Some of it, makes a lot of sense. I'll point something out too. Okay. Mike's a natural guy. Okay. Mike, is there any HRT or TRT involved in here that you'd like to publicly come out?
No, absolutely not. I always get flattered when people say that, and usually it's from a
Yeah.
couple videos where I always tell people, it's always from like a couple videos, and it's like, well, you see me working out when I was 10. If I'm 10 pounds lighter, which diet sometimes is half the thing, and just you get obviously as a bodybuilder, that it's just if the diet's on point, maybe you were hungry at the time of that thing, you didn't eat for a little bit, the light's hitting you right, you got a pump on.
Yes.
You get a pump on. I mean, that's all it really is, but that's why I think it's funny. But yeah, no.
Well, I'm going to point out, I want to give you a plug on this one. Okay. Any of you guys who have checked out any of Mike's videos, it was one you did a while back that was an all body sliding bench workout with the shirt off in the sun. Like, dang, that boy's got a body. Okay. So I'm saying that the whole HRT, TRT thing, I have to do this on the side right now. Let's talk about this for a moment. Mike, do you mind me asking you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the HRT, let's just call it TRT, okay? Because that's the most common phrase or way they say it, TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, okay? I don't think it's a coincidence as we get into, the 50s, the 60s. I'm not so sure that there's a physiological need for so many men to get on TRT as opposed to it being it's accessible now. And they could walk into a doctor's office any day of the week. And, if their testosterone measures a little bit low, the doc will be quick to put them on some TRT. And a lot of men, meanwhile, back in decades and populations past, they did just fine, going on, even with probably measurably lower testosterone levels. But, and I know personally, I've told the story about a buddy of mine, he's not with us anymore, but who at one point was measured at he was under 100. He had very low testosterone. And yet he had multiple girlfriends. So we know that worked fine. And he even talked about it like it's fine.
Yeah.
And aggressive, all of the things that normally go with a high testosterone man. Hair was falling out. And within all of that, he sits in front of his doctor, and the doctor says, "Son, are you feeling okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" And the doc goes, "Not tired, not having problems getting erections." And he goes, "No." And the doc looks at him and says, "Then you're willing it to happen, son, because you shouldn't even be able to do that with that low testosterone level." And you know what his one word answer was to all of it? He said, enthusiasm. He meant enthusiasm on the part of the young ladies that he was dating at the time, number one. But then number two, the enthusiasm that he had for everything that he did. So it went both ways, see?
Yeah.
So I'm making the case that a secure man who has the enthusiasm in his personal life as well as the enthusiasm in his professional life okay, but takes it outside the home even, uh, and stays healthy is doesn't belong on TRT or HRT. And I'll even go as far as to say that they don't even belong going and testing their testosterone levels.
I
Okay,
think that's the
because
way. I think that's the worst thing. I think as soon as you go down the rabbit hole of testing, I mean, of
yeah,
course, you gotta be careful of that. But if you want to find something wrong with you, you'll find something wrong with you. But I heard what you just said. That reminded me of something. You remember that guy Dan Pena? He's a famous business guy. He's crazy. He's an older guy, but he's nuts. He swears. Big business mongrel. Anyways, he said something one time. I remember and I'll flash up screen a picture of him, whatever.
sure.
But he said something like he's lecturing to all these young people. He's like, why you're so effing tired is because you have the motivation, which is I think is so true. It's like you're gonna feel tired and lethargic if you got nothing going on, and or there's something else happening in your life. So I understand we've probably all been there with psychological ups and downs, whatever. And I think that's one of the best things that can happen to you because, of course, there can be extremes. I'm sure there's people might need some hormones to help them with that,
Yeah,
and that's the issue. But I think we all can appreciate sometimes that's just the natural process. You got to figure something out. And we're religious people. That's God giving you. I think it's a blessing, cause for
yeah,
change, and something's going on. But I think it brings you
yeah.
closer to God. Not to get too religious about it, but
No, I believe it. I
yeah,
believe what you just said is that he restores my youth like the eagles. He gives me great things to eat. Psalm 37. It's all in there in the Bible. But the the real deal is that I believe that my systems all operate at a high level, and that's a gift from God. And Mike, the thing is when people you hear educated men and women say things on podcasts and on interviews, doctors especially, that say things like, well, that once you've passed the age of 40, your testosterone levels go down 1% every single year. Well, the moment you hear somebody say that to you, I say false, not me. That doesn't happen to me. Okay. That's the first thing. It doesn't happen to me. Now, if you're going to buy that and believe that because you heard it and keep repeating that with your mouth, then yeah, you're going to be hearing the most believable voice in your world, your own
yeah,
mouth,
yeah,
saying it, and you will believe it. And so your testosterone naturally will decline over time. But my point in bringing that up is that's an observation on the part of the medical community. It's just an observation. They're giving you their observation of what the majority of the public, mostly inactive, what happens to them over time. Well, I'm telling you that if you're out there killing something on a regular basis, meaning I don't mean out there shooting a rifle at something. I mean going to the gym, getting physical, going in your garage, getting physical, giving a high effort, okay, as if a mountain lion, just tried to kill you, okay? Give an effort of that nature next time you work out. If you're healthy and you have the ability to do it, go right ahead. And I don't mean necessarily on a squat, maybe on a curl, maybe on your sliding bench, maybe with doing the rear delts on your sliding bench. Next time you get on that sliding bench trainer, go ahead. Okay. I've seen your workouts, Mike. Some of them are really unique. And those exercises you're doing, you can take any one of them, take it to the end. Can you do
yeah,
high
for sure.
intensity training? I'm going to give you a question. Can you do high intensity training on a sliding bench trainer? Yes, you can. Take that exercise to the very end where you cannot get another clean rep in good form. Boom. You just did high intensity training. Okay. Give it that kind of effort as if life and death is on the line, as if a mountain lion just jumped on you. The only instructions you'll get if you go hiking up in the mountains, camping up in the mountains, you see a sign regarding mountain lions and how to react versus the signs that tell you what to do with a bear. A bear, they'll give you instructions on how to back off from a bear. They'll give you instructions. Hopefully you survive it, but they'll give you instructions. With a mountain lion, the only instruction they give you is fight back, because there is not, if you've been jumped on by a mountain lion, it's not that you just came upon the mountain lion. It was just tracking you for literally miles or literally hundreds of yards, waiting for the opportune time to take you down. And they're surgical. So when it comes down to it, you better fight for your life. So that kind of an effort, once in a while, you got to be killing something. You got to do what men do. Okay. You got to kill something and reproduce and eat some saturated fat once in a while. All of that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to bring it all the way down because you're a different breed for sure. Well, I think everything you're saying is spot on. But I
Yeah.
also think there's something with like people had this false sense, like this arrested development where we're never going to age, which I think is something. I was talking to my dad about this in his 70s. And I think he was, again, go getter, blah, blah. But I mean, there's a different level in the stage. I'm not saying to succumb to just, will give up and don't do anything, but there's a certain level of wisdom where I think God on purpose slows you down. Now it's a different time to reflect on different stuff. I don't think you're meant to be chasing girls in your 60s and 70s. And certainly my libido is not like as where it was, and thank God it's not, because there'd be problems. But I think there's this natural ebb and flows, and I think people want to just shut that down. Like, no, I want to stay 25 forever, which I'm sure I think sounds cool, but it's going to have there's
Yeah.
going to be that give and take for sure. So, uh,
I agree with you. I agree with you. And within that same thought process, I would make a case for just don't let it go.
yeah,
Occasionally,
100%.
there's a time for killing something. On occasion, there's a time, with your wife. I'm speaking. I'm not talking about going out with a younger woman, whatever the deal is. But if you have a young wife, great. But with your wife, right, with your appropriate spouse, going for it and doing the things that you know they send a signal to your body to retain somewhat of a youthful
Yeah,
physicality. Yes, yes. And
100%.
so all of that to a degree. I'm not saying you don't do it like you did when you were younger. Obviously, things change, and you're right. There's definitely more of a thoughtful approach as you get older.
Yeah.